Congress is back in Washington for the second session of the 119th Congress, and Republicans kicked off the week with a retreat featuring remarks from President Trump. We asked House Majority Whip Tom Emmer about his takeaways from the day and vision for the House in 2026.
Well, it's kind of a continuation from last year. It's great to be with you, Lydia, especially after we all got to part ways and try to enjoy a family and, time down over Christmas and New Year's. But now we're back to work. And that was more the theme on Tuesday when everybody came back in. The discussion is, you got to be here. You got to be ready to work. We got some major things to get done, including the appropriations process from last year. We've got a deadline coming up in about 9 or 10 days, which is moving along, I think, better than people understand. We'll see how it goes today and then next week, but I think that's going to wrap up pretty well. We still have a farm bill to get done, right? What's left of the farm bill. The good news is we did a bunch of the more controversial is not the word, but where people have differences of opinions and typically on money. A lot of that got done in the Working Families Tax Cut Act, which hopefully our ag communities will start to see some differences coming this month with that law being implemented finally. But we talk about things like that and the fact that we've got to get this accomplished before everybody starts going off and doing the campaigns that we do every 2 years.
And you mentioned that January deadline. 9 of the 12 appropriation bills are still not passed. I mean, do you think that there could be another government shutdown?
I'm not going to do hypotheticals. Coulda, maybe. I don't think I don't think we're not going to get our work done. I think the nuns at Our Lady of Grace would be mad at me for that double negative. You're going to see 3 of the 9 get passed today. You're going to see another 3 at least get passed next week, and then obviously the last ones would get done right before the deadline or right on the deadline. So I expect this to get done. And the good news is, the appropriators agreed to a top line before Christmas, which is why I'm confident. My goal, my hope was, as a member of leadership, that we started passing some of these bills before we left for Christmas. But even without being able to do that, the fact that they reached agreement on a top line and they were able to work over Christmas and New Year's to start building these out, knowing what both sides agreed on, that's almost as good. Now we just have to, the physical part of it, we have to be in Washington, D.C. We've got to pass the procedural resolutions, and then we've got to pass the bills. So I'm confident we're going to get that done.
Farm groups are optimistic that a year-round E15 could potentially be included in a budget package, potentially a minibus this year. Do you think it's feasible for E15 to finally cross the finish line in one of those packages?
I've been advocating for this for years. In fact, I had an understanding, I thought, in the first Trump administration that we were going to have year-round E15. I actually talked to the president about it during the first Trump administration. I would like to tell you that I'm confident that we can get that done. We'll just have to see how all the pieces end up coming together at the end. The good news for our ag country and for people who are involved in the agricultural marketplace in this country is that you got a lot of allies. There's a lot of people who understand the importance of things like year-round E15, and I think you're going to see it.
A first budget reconciliation bill was passed earlier this summer, and as you mentioned, some very important provisions for agriculture within that. But Speaker Johnson has indicated that he's potentially open, a lot of things up in the air, but potentially open to a second budget reconciliation bill in 2026. I'm curious, first, what are the odds of that happening, and what would you like to see in it? I mean, it's a very interesting political landscape with a very narrow majority in the House.
Well, first off, I appreciate the work that the Speaker's doing in this regard, and he's trying to generate momentum for what we're doing, which is great. If it is another reconciliation bill, that'll be wonderful. The question, though, because he's opened the conversation, the question is going to be, what does the administration want, and will they be willing to lean in on it? If it's a narrowly drafted document that the White House has gotten behind, I think then it's very possible that you could see that done. But as we sit here today, Lydia, I can't tell you what those items are that are going to be in it because that's really how the secret sauce is made. What is the agreement? And this one's going to be between Republicans. And remember, just because someone is a Republican doesn't mean that all Republicans think alike and all Republicans have the same goal for the outcome. So that's what we have to work through. As soon as the White House and our leadership reaches some understanding of what they want and what is possible, then we can get to work with members and see where we have agreement, see where we need to iron out differences. And I mean, you saw what happened last year. They said we couldn't do it, and we actually did do it. We not only did it, we not only passed the budget resolution they said we would never be able to do, we did it before Memorial Day, which they also said, even if you could do it, you're never going to get it done that fast. And then we actually passed the bill itself on July 3rd, and the president signed it into law on July 4th. Again, way earlier than anybody ever thought. In fact, if you go back to the first Trump administration, you might remember that bill didn't get done in the first year until the end of December. So we're 6 months early on the last one. I have no doubt that if the speaker reaches some kind of understanding with the president as to what they're looking for in a reconciliation 2.0, we're going to be able to get that done.
And there were many important provisions important to agriculture within that budget reconciliation bill as well. And having conversations with Chairman Thompson of the House Agriculture Committee, he said that he'd like to see provision for tax breaks for U.S.-made farm machinery if a second budget reconciliation bill is brought forward. I mean, a lot of what ifs, a lot of things in the air right now, as you were explaining, but is that something that you would support?
Oh, absolutely, Lydia. So let's say we didn't do this at the beginning. I'm the whip in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's for people who are viewing, listening, that's the third position, the third highest ranking position in leadership. The speaker's in charge for everything that happens on the floor, everything that happens on the campus, security, the agenda, et cetera. The majority leader is responsible for working with chairs and scheduling floor action, right? And building a calendar for the year so that members know when they're going to be in Washington and when they're going to be working with constituents at home. The whip, I argue, has the best job of anyone because my job is to work with all of our members. And I've got to be able to take our members, what they believe, what they're willing to do, and take that to the majority leader and the speaker to tell them what is possible. Our job is to get this stuff over the line. So when I do the whip's job, it's kind of separate from my position as a representative for Minnesota's 6th congressional district. But you know what? The core values from my district are still here, and I do still advocate for them. I started on the Ag Committee when I came to Congress. One of the best committees in Congress. And you referenced G.T. Thompson, our chairman, current chairman from Pennsylvania. He has been a staunch advocate for ag families, for the ag community, for ag markets. And he's been working pretty closely with the Trump administration, the president, letting him know, we've got challenges in the ag communities. We've got to deal with some of these challenges. We understand what you're trying to do to open up new markets for, different products that certain countries haven't purchased from us in decades. That stuff is all important for me, whether it's year-round E15, whether it's eliminating taxes on farm machinery, whether it's creating new tax incentives, whether it's redirecting tariff revenue to the farm community that is actually shouldering some of the burden. I support all of that. I mean, agriculture is one of the two primary drivers of my state's economy. I mean, I know you come from the great state of Iowa, and remember everything, well, I won't get into it. We like to tease each other from Minnesota and Iowa, but we have similar interests when it comes to this. And we've got 65,000 farms in the state of Minnesota, and I've got the largest dairy district of anyone, Stearns County, Minnesota. So when it comes to the issues that you're asking me about, yes, my job as the whip is to make sure that I help Mike primarily move the agenda that he wants to move. But I always keep in my sights what's good for Minnesota. because I think you'd probably say this about Iowa. What's good for Minnesota is good for America.
Yeah, and to begin our conversation, you said, passing a farm bill, still a priority, still on the burner. I'm curious, as we look to this year, Chairman Thompson, right before the Christmas break, said, hope to move that through committee in January. I'm curious if you see that moving, and also kind of when you look at the politics of the House Ag Committee, Ranking Member Angie Craig will be running for Senate. So if her stepping away with her campaign, if you think that the farm bill might move sooner because she has more fuel to get that done before she potentially steps away for another role.
I guess the reason I love the Ag Committee is because it should be one of the most nonpartisan committees in Congress, quite frankly. It's not, people who eat are not just Republicans, and they're not just Democrats. I think there's some major Ivy League school who did this really expensive study over a period of years, and they concluded that 4 out of 4 people still need to eat, right? So the beauty of that was a shot at the Ivy. The beauty of the Ag Committee is it's not supposed to be about Republicans and Democrats. So what I'm about to say to you is not intended to be partisan. But we lost, and G.T. Thompson lost a lot of time with the shutdown that took place beginning on October 1st. And frankly, I'm still frustrated by that because that has delayed everything, which is why we had you can call a retreat, whatever, but it's more of a locker room meeting that took place at the beginning of this week when everybody came back. Look, we got a lot of things that have been compressed in time now because of that 40-some day shutdown that was, frankly, not necessary, and it wasn't good for anyone, right? So here we are. Now we're going to have to literally step it up and accelerate it. I don't know if GT is still marking that up in January because of that 40-some day delay. Yes, it was his hope. But you have some realities with time. And I think while it's still a priority of his, and I know it's still a priority of especially Democrats who, represent not only rural districts, but districts where people need food, it's a big deal. So whether it's January or February, I do see it moving. And again, we can celebrate the fact that a lot of things that are Farm Bill related were passed in that Working Families Tax Cut Act, and that our farm families in the ag community will start to realize the benefits of those as early as the end of January, going into February, March, et cetera. But we're not done yet. And I think everybody recognizes that there's still a lot of work to do. We can celebrate the greatest farms, the greatest producers, the greatest markets on the face of the planet. But if our guys can't survive, if they can't make a return on what they're producing, that's all for naught. And I think that is well understood by members of Congress. So don't expect that it's going to sit on the shelf. GT meant what he said. I think he might have run into a little bit of a compressed time situation with the shutdown, but we'll see. He may still well move that before the end of the month.
Yeah. And I want to talk 2026 midterms are very top of mind as well. When we look across the country, specifically at many rural districts in America, what messaging will the Republican Party be leaning into? A continued focus on affordability?
Yeah, the economy is actually improving. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have chosen that word, suggesting that that's what's going to carry them on Election Day. They don't have an agenda. Quite frankly, the Biden administration created double-digit inflation, put our economy in the ditch. We are recovering from that, and it's pretty amazing that you got the lowest gas prices you've seen in 5 years. You had growth last quarter of over 4% GDP growth, which frankly is unheard of. The CBO had suggested before we passed the Working Families Tax Cut Act that bill would only generate 1.8% growth over the next 10 years. And we had 4.3%. The job market is starting to solidify, but we need other things. Literally, one of the reasons that all this costs so much is because of fraud in the system and because of something called the Unaffordable Care Act. There was a deal done 15 years ago, and I think people had their heart in the right place, that they thought they were going to do this great thing for healthcare. But in fact, what the Democrats at that time and the health insurance industry did is they created a situation where only the health insurance industry has been benefiting. In the last 15 years, do you realize that the value of these companies has, some cases, has gone up 1,700%, while health insurers have been making huge dollars off of Americans, and quite frankly, our farm families are finding it harder and harder to pay for the insurance that they need to actually get access to the greatest health care in the world. That's something that the president has focused on. He went after pharmaceuticals. You've probably seen the most favored nation situation. He said, if you're going to sell a drug in Europe, for instance, for $30, and you're going to charge a U.S. customer $1,500 for the same drug that you're selling for $30 in Europe, guess what? You're going to sell it to Americans for $30. We're going to have the same price that you're giving to people around the world. And that's going to have a dramatic impact on drug prices. Now he said he is calling in all the major CEOs for the health insurance companies in this country, and he's going to have a similar discussion. As we try to clean up fraud, for instance, the SNAP program in Minnesota, you had almost $80 million in overpayments in just 2024, and I don't have the 2025 numbers. This is why things are so expensive. And I think not only are you going to see over the next few months, you've already seen economic growth, you're starting to see stabilization. People shouldn't expect all prices to come down. Once the economy does this major inflation thing that we saw the first time in 40 years, double-digit inflation under Joe Biden and company, once that happens, the prices, they might come down a little bit. I mean, I know eggs have come down, I know gas has come down, but overall, you're still going to have prices because prices typically don't come back to where they were beforehand. But you know what has to happen? Wages have to go up, and that's already begun. Watch for the next few months as we go into the midterms. Watch for the economy to take off. I mean, this is really the beginning this month. And we still had growth of 4.3% before January 1st in the last quarter of last year. So watch as no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security for seniors. I think seniors can now deduct like 12%, 12,000, I'm sorry, which is a huge number if you look at the vast majority of our seniors who are collecting Social Security. Those things and others that the farm community is going to be able to access are going to make a difference. And I'm pretty bullish on where we're going to be come next August, September, October.
And President Trump's trade policy has really shaken up the global marketplace as well, and very much impacted farmers, rural producers, export losses for their product, especially this fall through harvest. I mean, will President Trump's trade policy be a talking point in the midterms?
You know, it's been a difficult time, but the farmers that I talk to, as long as they're not, a staunch Democrat or a staunch Republican, just the producer, the family farm who just wants to survive and raise their family and be able to, compete. What I'm hearing from them, and it's consistent, it's not the message I get from the mainstream media that wants to make everything about some political divide. The message I'm getting from them is, it's really hard. There are challenges that we are encountering, but at least President Trump is trying to address a problem that no one else has chosen to address over the last several decades, and that is any of his predecessors on the Republican or Democrat side. So, I'm sure people will try to bring that up, but that's a partisan fight on the reality side of it, where people are not going to get into this partisan fight. It's like, as we open up markets that have been forever closed for decades, as those markets start to reopen to American producers, the best producers on the globe, the results, I think, will eliminate that partisan discussion. And again, the farmers in my district that I talk to, it's a challenge, but they are happy that he's at least trying something to deal with this problem.
And I want to get your thoughts as well. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota announced that he will not be running for re-election, and there's speculation that Senator Amy Klobuchar, the ranking member of the Senate Ag Committee, could run for governor of Minnesota to fill his seat. I'm curious of what you think if she chooses to run, what that can mean for Minnesota agriculture, but also, here in Washington, if we have a new one of the four corners on the Senate Ag Committee.
Amy, I've gotten along with. We do a lot of work together. She's not going to run for governor. I'd be shocked. She will be here in Washington. She'll be doing her job. Governor Walz, I have my differences with the governor. I think it was a very wise decision by the governor to step aside and say that he's going to let someone else run from the Democrat side of the aisle. We'll see how that all shakes out. I mean, we've got a lot of issues that we're dealing with in Minnesota right now, and it's unfortunate. And I'm so grateful to be doing this interview because we don't have to talk about all those issues right now because they're pretty hot out in the marketplace. I think as Minnesotans, as we're going forward, change we don't like very much, right? And I'm sure that's the same in Iowa and the Dakotas. It's one of those things that, we like things the way they are, but change in this case is going to be good. Every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years, you have elections. You get a new batch of people that come in. You have a changing of the guard. I think that's what we're experiencing here in Washington, D.C., and that's what we're going to be experiencing back in Minnesota come the fall. I think it's going to be real healthy. And the only message I would give everybody, Lydia, it's okay to have differences. It's okay to have major disagreements. I mean, we should be able to do this in our family, too, where you're actually like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, where you're going after each other. But guess what? At the end of the day, we all are very fortunate to be Americans and to live in this country. We need to overcome our differences, much like Donald Trump and Elon Musk have apparently done that now and shown the whole world that you can have a very serious disagreement and yet still be friends. And I think that's the beauty of our system. And I think that's been our history. And I think that'll be our future.
And as we wrap up here, I wanted to get your thoughts on the newly released dietary guidelines for Americans. The guidelines call for Americans to cut back on eating highly processed foods, but school nutrition directors say that will require more federal funding to really implement in school meals. Are you open to providing additional funding so that they can implement, providing more whole foods?
Look, you can never provide enough funding for these schools. Let's go back to the nutrition thing because you weaved in the never-ending, we need more money from the schools. You know what? Our schools need to start looking within. And instead of building Taj Mahals in every little community, you got to start looking how to be more efficient, how to deliver education services directly to children in a much better way that's tailored to them. With all the technology that we have now, with all the stuff that we know, it's time to start putting that to work in our school systems, whether it's in Iowa or Minnesota or California, or you pick your location. By the way, people watching should know that in the Working Families Tax Cut Act that was signed into law on July 4th, states will now have the opportunity for school choice. It will be up to the governor of the state to determine whether they want to go into that program and allow school choice. I think that when school administrators tell me that it's going to cost more money to feed children, it's really important that school boards that have parents who are actually feeding their children at home be evaluating those claims. Because whenever you go to change something and make it more efficient, what I hear from the education cartel is the same thing every time. We need more money. We don't have enough money. We're never going to have enough money. We've got to figure out how to do a better job with what we've got. And it's interesting that this time the federal government is talking about more general things. Instead of telling you and me, Lydia, that, well, at school, our child has to have this much fruit, has to have this much of a vegetable. They're just cautioning us. We've gone a little too far. There's a reason why some of these conditions are developing. Is it because of too much processing of our food? Is it because of some of the chemicals that are used as preservatives? I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking at that stuff and questioning it. And as parents, Jackie and I raised 7 kids. I can tell you that I'm married to someone who's been doing that for the last 35 years. I mean, she always was looking at what was in this stuff and how it's used. Unfortunately, not everybody has that mindset. And I think that's really what our federal government is doing right now, is saying, hey, just because it's been this way for so long doesn't mean it's the right way, and we always need to reevaluate. So hopefully we're going to do that, and hopefully our schools, rather than going to the same old mantra before we even know what we're talking about, saying we need more money because the feds are doing something. By the way, I am sensitive to that, because back in the day, all the federal mandates that schools got with no funding, I mean, that is a problem. We should not be doing that from the federal government. But when it comes to this issue, obviously you can tell I have some opinions about what my kids are eating, what I'm eating. And I think before we start fighting about what it costs, let's figure out what we're talking about.
Yeah, Whip Emmer, we really appreciate you joining us today. And for all of our farmers, ranchers, rural decision makers watching, listening, what's your message from Washington to them as we look into 2026?
Remember, we're going to have differences. That's the beauty of our system. We might have very, I hate the word because it's a Washington word, but robust differences where people run into each other with their different opinions. But at the end of the day, we all want the same things. We want to be safe and secure in our homes, our communities, in our country, around the world. We all want to be able to feed ourselves and feed our families. We all want to be able to pay for shelter and get access to the things that we need, and really put our kids in a place for a better future than we've had. I think all of it is still there. I think we're going to see that. And I think Americans are going to experience something you and I haven't seen in probably 2-3 decades, and that is the differences starting to come back together and work together.